Minecraft is a game full of awesome and amazing creatures, and because of those creatures, there's a lot of really interesting things that we are allowed to do. Awesome mechanics and just tons of really cool things. So I figured that today we would take a little bit of time and place all of the mobs in Minecraft into a tier list. And yes, this is my method of ranking it. I could have divided it up based off of passive and hostile mobs, but I wanted to put them all head to head in a comparison next door to each other. And do I realize that people are going to disagree with me? Yes, but that's just kind of the nature of these types of things. So let's go ahead and get these characters ranked. And I haven't looked at anyone else's tier lists for these mobs, and I will only be ranking the mobs that are currently in the game in 1.16.5. And where there are other talking points, I will kind of touch on those, but I will be ranking them as the game currently stands, 1.16.5. So any mobs that are getting new functionality in 1.17 and up, that will not be taken into consideration at this point in time, though I may revisit it later on down the road. The one difference that my list will possibly have when compared to other tier lists is I have installed the more mob heads data pack, so I do have the actual mob heads for all of these mobs, and that is certainly something to keep in mind with at least how I'll be visually presenting everything. And the method which I used to get a hold of all of these mob heads is I set up a little command block, edited the mob that needed to come through, just kind of spawned them in all repeatedly, one after the other, and then got the kill with a looting sword in order to, get the mob head that was needed. And any additional mobs that I did not like, I went ahead and cleared them out of the world just to cut down on a lot of the noise that happens. So we've got our first line of heads lined up here, and I will be going in alphabetical order. So make sure that you are aware that that's the order that we'll be going on. So first up, we have the bat. And the bat, it's useless. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't drop anything. It doesn't have any functionality. So this is quite possibly the worst mob in all of Minecraft. And we will move these around out of the different tiers as needed, because I do hope to eventually have these tiers ordered. But for now, bat, you go right there. You're horrible. Next up on our list, we have the bee. And the bee has a lot of really awesome functionality, especially when it comes to redstone. Now, you can gather honey from the bees, which you can then turn into honey blocks. You can shave off parts of their nest and make honeycomb. There's a lot of really good functionality that comes out of the bees. And since the honey blocks and slime blocks don't stick to each other, that allows for more elaborate redstone capacities and functionalities. Defensively, the bees actually will put up a little bit of a fight. If you do not one-shot them, or if something does damage to them, they will hunt you down, they will sting you and affect you with some poison for a brief period of time. So at least they have some sort of retaliation mechanic built into them. And based off of the functionality that they do bring to the game, but with a step back based off of how difficult they can be to farm and set up and use efficiently, I am going to go ahead and place them in B tier. And yeah, I get it. Bees are in B tier. Haha, that's funny. But there are some core mechanics that really draw the bee back, especially for players who are not familiar with the redstone mechanics of the game. That really kind of serves as a detriment to what you're able to accomplish. Next up, we have blazes. And of course, blazes, they are integral to the game. You need to have access to blazes to get blaze rods for blaze powder, which is both used for potion brewing. It's used for crafting Eyes of Ender. There's just a ton of functionality that comes out of blazes, and in a pinch, or if you have a really efficient farm, you can use blaze rods as a highly efficient fuel source. So this is actually going to be the first of our mobs that I'm going to place up into the S tier, just based off of how purely versatile these mobs really are. Now, I am kind of prejudiced against cats. I personally, just in real life, I don't really care for them. I'm sorry, cat lovers. That's going to be a really controversial hot take, I can already tell. But if I put my bias aside and talk about cats as a mob within Minecraft, they do have quite a bit of utility. They are unique in the fact that they are immune to fall damage. They could fall off the highest cliffs and take absolutely no damage. Of course, they're not going to voluntarily run off of a cliff, but if they are pushed off of anything from whatever height, they will not take any damage whatsoever. Cats also can see players and entities that are invisible. So if you're trying to use an invisibility potion to sneak up on a cat and be a little bit more friendly, just know it's not going to work. It's not going to pay off for you whatsoever. Cats will hiss at phantoms and deter them from drawing closer to a character if they are near a player, which certainly helps with the deterring factor and makes them a little bit more beneficial when it comes to having them around as pets. And additionally, creepers will avoid cats as well, which does help in terms of making sure that you can build some highly efficient creeper-only farms, as well as, avoiding griefing of your structures if you keep a cat near areas where the creepers would spawn, provided that you haven't spawn-proofed your buildings and such. Now, there are 11 different varieties of cats, and there is an achievement for capturing or taming one of each of the kinds of cats. So there's, of course, the in-game achievement attribute to that as well. And with any pets that can be tamed, they do teleport closer to you within reason, which is kind of handy for the cats to do as well. Now, one thing that can happen is when you go down to sleep at night, tamed cats, if they are not in a sitting position and they come and lay down on the bed along with you, they do have a 70% chance to give a gift of any sort. And this has to be a nighttime sleep, not a thunderstorm sleep during the daytime. And the list of gifts that can be given by a cat is, of course, they can give a. And the list of gifts that a cat can provide is they can give a rabbit's foot, a rabbit hide, a string, rotten flesh, feather, raw chicken, or the coveted item from that list, and the rarest to drop is a phantom membrane. So those are definitely perks as well. Now, if you do end up killing or taking out a cat, they do or can drop string. So in a pinch, if you're really in the need for some string, I guess you can take out a cat, but there are much better methods of getting string if that's what you're looking for. So with all of those mechanics for cats looked at, where do I think that they fit in? Well, they do have some nice versatility in what they're able to present. I don't feel like that makes them the best of the best, especially where the drops that they give you are not consumables, with the exception of the versatility of that phantom membrane. But I actually feel like this is also another good candidate to go here in the B tier. So let's go ahead and place them right there. Next up, we have the cave spider. And the cave spider, oh boy, this guy, he is a royal pain. Now, fortunately, cave spiders do not spawn naturally. They only come from cave spider spawners, which are found in abandoned mine shafts. And you don't want to pick a fight with these guys. They are smaller than spiders, so they can get into areas that spiders would not normally be able to. They will hunt you down vigorously, and if you are attacked by a cave spider, you will take poison damage. And poison will not kill you outright, but it will take you down to half a heart. And cave spiders, they inflict that poison for quite a long duration. So unless you've got some really good protection on standby, and preferably some milk, you are going to be taking a large amount of damage from the cave spider. Now, the cave spider doesn't give any unique drops. When it's killed, it'll still give the same drops that a regular spider would, that being string and or a spider eye. And note that the spiders will only drop the spider eye on a player kill. If you set up some sort of environmental kill, you will not be able to gain the spider eye from them. They will only drop string upon death. Due to them not having a whole lot of useful stuff, and yes, spider eyes are highly useful, especially when it comes to potion making. But apart from that, there are other sources of spider eyes beside spiders in general that are a little bit less painful to work with. And they're just overall annoying. But they do have their use, so I can't really place them too far down on this list. I will put them in D tier just because, well, they could do other things or drop something a little bit more rewarding for, being a unique mob. And I would like to see them do a little bit more than the standard spider would. And I'd like them to give a better reward than what the spider does instead of just the exact same drops. Chicken, we have the chicken. And the chicken it's an okay mob. Of course, chickens will lay eggs. And eggs have a very low, very, very low chance of spawning a chicken when thrown or sent out of a dispenser. So you can set up some automatic chicken farms that will net you some free roast chicken as an early game food source. Though chicken is not the best food source in the game, it's not a bad food source by any means. In addition to dropping either raw or roast chicken on death, depending on how they're killed, they will also drop feathers. Feathers are somewhat useful as they can be used to craft a couple of different items such as arrows, as well as some books and quill. But again, not the most powerful, not the most potent mob in the game. But because they do give you some additional things that you can work with, I am going to place them above the cave spider. I will put them in C tier. And that's kind of where they'll hang out for the time being. Oh boy, here is cod. And cod, it's one of the fish that will spawn in cold and lukewarm oceans. And they're a mob. They exist. They're very small. When killed, they will drop raw cod or cooked cod if you kill them with a fire means. They do have a chance of dropping bone meal. That's on the Java edition, which is where I primarily play. But apart from that, they don't really do a whole lot. And cooked cod isn't the best food source by any means. They don't offer anything else super useful, and they're just kind of a pain to go after. Yeah, you can get cod from cod as the item from killing a couple of other aquatic animals, but they don't really do a whole lot other than that. So just due to their sheer lack of versatility, we're going to go ahead and place the cod in E tier. Because they do something, at least they're not useless like the bat. Next up, we have the cow, and the cow is a super, super useful mob. Of course, you get steak from killing the cows. You get leather as well. Those are incredibly useful food items and other drop items, as leather is highly useful for making books, which can then be enchanted and made into enchantments that just completely revolutionize the way that the game is played. Cows are really, really good. I don't think that they are in the best of the best, mainly because, there are alternate food sources. There are alternate methods of getting leather, but they are by no means a slouchy mob. So I will go ahead and place them up here in A tier. Additionally, you can drink milk from cows, and that will remove any potion effect, whether that's a beneficial or detrimental potion effect. It's just very, very good resource management of what you can get out of cows and what they bring to the table. Creeper, oh man. Yeah, they're quintessential, the iconic Minecraft mob. Creepers are very annoying. They blast holes in structures, they grief your projects, they sneak up on you out of nowhere, and you've got to react very fast or you could find yourself very, very dead. But if you are able to take out creepers or set up a creeper farm, you will have access to one of the best resources in the game, that being gunpowder. As gunpowder can be used to craft TNT, it can be used to craft flight rockets for your elytra. There's just a lot that you can accomplish with a creeper that will really revolutionize the game. But there's nothing that will send you into just a dead panic as that hiss as it takes off in the background. So again, creepers, highly, highly useful. They go right up here into S tier. Despite how annoying they are incredibly useful. Dolphins. I really like dolphins. Dolphins are my favorite aquatic animal in general, and not just in the Minecraft aspect. They are just very intelligent and super fun. You know, they play around with dropped items that are out in the water. That can be a little bit annoying, especially if you drop a tool that you did not mean to. And I do think that dolphins are a little bit lackluster, if we're being completely honest. Now, they do offer Dolphin's Grace, which will allow you to swim very, very fast underwater, and there's some new tech, some new cheese that's been devised that you can use when combining Depth Strider, Soul Speed, and Dolphin's Grace to just move incredible amounts of distance in just split seconds. So dolphins certainly do have their uses, but they're a very niche mob. If you do kill a dolphin for whatever reason, you can get cod from them, but they have far more uses living than they do when they are killed or otherwise harvested. So I don't think that they warrant a very high spot on the tier list. I will place them here on D tier, and I do think that they are at least a little bit more useful than cave spiders, so let's move the cave spiders down a rung and put the dolphins up here towards the top. Next up, we have the donkey, and donkeys are very, they're very interesting. They serve quite a bit of versatility, actually, which is really cool in my opinion. Now, if you are feeling up to killing a donkey, you'll get leather out of it, or you can get leather out of it, which is, I mean, that's a choice that you could make, but there's a lot better versatility that you could get out of having a donkey. And what happens when you use a donkey is you can put a saddle on a donkey and ride it around, but perhaps infinitely more useful, you can have some wandering storage or some tag-along storage with you. You can add a chest or equip a chest to a donkey and gain an additional 15 inventory slots. Yeah, it's not quite as good as having a chest outright, but it's better than nothing, and especially with the inventory management that you can use from shulker boxes and other inventory expansions. They are certainly useful, and you shouldn't underestimate them by any large degree. Now, they do become a little bit irrelevant once you do have access to elytra flight, as it's just not beneficial to walk around different places. So they quickly are relegated to a point where they're less useful than they otherwise could be. But I don't want to rule them out as a terrible option. So donkeys, where do I feel like they should go on this list? I actually feel like they belong up here on B tier, if nothing else for the sheer fact of the matter that they well, they can provide additional versatility. I think bees are more useful comparatively than donkeys, so we'll go ahead and put donkeys above cats, if nothing else, for the sheer matter of fact that donkeys allow you to travel a little bit more easily, both by being a rideable animal and by having additional storage space of where to store your items. Next up, we have the Drowned, and Drowned are very polarizing. Drowned, as of currently, they have a chance to drop gold on death, and I mean that's kind of useful, I guess. That's being retconned in 1.17 where they'll drop copper. I want to mention that, but that's not playing into my ranking as of currently of the Drowned. Other things that you can get from Drowned is you can get Nautilus shells. If a Drowned spawns with a Nautilus shell in its hand, it has a 100% chance to drop it on death. So that's always a nice benefit that you can get out of them. And Nautilus shells, of course, are used to craft conduits, which are just make building and doing things underwater so much nicer. They also can spawn with tridents, and though trident drowns are quite annoying to have to deal with, they do have the benefit of, if you can get that trident off of them, which is a lot easier to do on Bedrock Edition than it is on Java Edition, but if you can get a trident off of them, you can have access to some busted mechanics, and that is in the form of both Riptide and channeling tridents. Channeling tridents in particular are highly useful because you can supercharge creepers and allow creepers to blow up on zombies, skeletons, wither skeletons, and guarantee head drops from those mobs in a vanilla setting. Sadly, with this More Mob Heads pack, it does not give you an option for... Sadly, with the More Mob Heads data pack, you don't have an option to gain a guaranteed head from the other mobs that come off of this. It's only applied by player kills, but it is a cool mechanic nonetheless. And as a brief side note, we didn't even really discuss the fact that creepers can be supercharged, so that's just another item that allows them to be placed up here on the S tier position. So Drowned, where do they end up? I do feel like they are very, very useful with what they drop. They're a lot more useful than the other variants of zombies in the game. So we're going to go ahead and place them in B tier. And again, I'm going to bump the cat down another spot on this list just because, yeah, they're useful, but they're just kind of being outshone and outclassed here, if I'm being honest. Ooh, the Elder Guardian. This is a very interesting mob. Elder Guardians, they are annoying because mining fatigue, you know, until you take out those Guardians, you're going to be consistently having refreshed mining fatigue on about that 5-minute timer, which just relegates you absolutely and completely useless when doing anything. However, if you do take out the Elder Guardians, you can get sponges, or you can get additional sponges, apart from those that are in the sponge rooms of those underwater sea temples. And they will also give some of the same drops that you can get off of regular Guardians. So they're just a little bit of a pain. They're technically one of the mini bosses of the overworld, but they leave a lot to be desired, if I'm being completely honest. So I am going to go ahead and put them in C tier, though I feel like they do outclass the chicken. So let's go ahead and swap those heads around. And now for the Ender Dragon. A little bit of a controversial take here. I don't think that the Ender Dragon is one of the best mobs in the game. Yes, it's a very fun fight. It's iconic. There's a lot of really good things to say about the Ender Dragon, but hear me out. For as powerful as the Ender Dragon is, it doesn't give you anything unique. Yeah, it dumps a ton of levels on you the first time that you kill it, but if you respawn it back in, you get progressively less and less levels out of it. So there's not a whole lot of usefulness that comes out of the Ender Dragon, but To its credit, upon defeating the Ender Dragon, you then gain access to the End Gateways, which can take you out to the End Islands, where you get access to higher tiered endgame loot. So, though I cannot justify in my mind placing the Ender Dragon in S tier, we will go ahead and place the Ender Dragon here in A tier. And yeah, I guess they are a little bit more useful than cows. So we'll put the, in terms of what they eventually bring to the table and make possible. So we will put the Ender Dragon in the top of A tier. Next up, we have the Endermen. And Endermen, they, again, are an iconic Minecraft mob. And, I mean, they're one of the best sources of levels, especially once you set up an Enderman farm. They give Ender Pearls, which are good for additional versatility despite the recoil damage that you do take from using the Ender Pearls. But the Ender Pearls are needed for crafting Eyes of Ender for, you know, beating the game. So you can't rule them out, though they have, I feel, slipped a little bit in terms of their usefulness now with the fact that you can get Ender Pearls from either villager trading as well as Piglen bartering with the new mechanic that was added in the 1.16 updates. However, I can't rule them out completely as they do still have their uses. I don't feel like they meet the same requirement as the Blazes and the Creepers, and I can put them in A tier just based off of the sheer amount of experience. And yeah, if you get a good Enderman farm put together, you are going to be set on levels for life. You can recuperate and gain levels very, very quickly. So, very useful mob. And although at one time it probably did belong up here in the S tier, it's just is a lot of the niche perks that come from the Endermen have been less and less as the years have gone on and other updates have come out for it. Endermites, on the other hand, they serve one purpose and one purpose only. They make Endermen angry, and that baits them into the trap. So they're just bad. They're not useless. So I can't really put them in F tier, but they have exactly one function that they're good at, one function that they serve. So that places them solidly here in the E tier. And yes, the COD at least does a couple of additional things and offers something when it dies. So Endermite has a one very specific, very particular use that it's good for. I just wish it did something else, dropped something, gave something, anything. Ah, the Evoker. So the Evoker is, how do I put this? He's terrifying. He's only found within woodland mansions and in raids, and have varying degrees of when they appear in raids depending on your game's difficulty. But upon defeating an Evoker, you get one of the most busted items in the game, that being the Totem of Undying. And Totems of Undying got better in 1.16 because they gave you the added benefit of fire resistance as well. So a lot of really good things that come out of this. Yeah, you can passively get some emeralds out of them as well. But just from the sheer fact that you can get Totems of Undying off of this guy, that puts him very high up on this list. And given how integral it is to efficiently farm Evokers and get those Totems of Undying in like a hardcore setting to make sure that you're not going to lose that world or that you don't lose it for a period of time, that puts the Evoker up in a very high and coveted spot. And a hot take, I feel like he belongs up here in S tier. Granted, he's at the tail end of S tier, and I will continue to bump him down on that list as we continue to go as needed. But just by the fact that you get one of the most overpowered items in the game, that puts him very, very high up here, despite how much of a pain in the neck he can be to combat with the summoning of Vexes, as well as the snapping claw or dragon-type attack that comes up from under your feet when facing off against him. Foxes. Foxes are very interesting. They're unique in terms of a lot of things they can do, especially with the fact that you can put items in their mouth, including giving them enchanted weapons. Which is just crazy to me. They will attack a couple of different mobs, such as chickens, rabbits, cod, salmon, and tropical fish, and baby turtles when they're on land. So that's something that can be done, and again, if you equip them with an enchanted sword, or set them up in a killing chamber where they have access to hitting those mobs, they will give you the benefit, especially if you have like a fire aspect sword on that fox. Will hit the mob in question, and that will cause them to drop the cooked variants of those food. Additionally, you can be used to harvest sweet berries and glowberries. This is a feature in the 1.17 update, which is very useful. So you can make automatic sweet berry farms and eventually automatic glowberry farms as well. So they're quite nice. Now, they are lazy mobs. They're awake during the day, and that can be a bit annoying, but that can be circumvented by the fact of placing an armor stand within 12 blocks of the fox. They will not continue to sleep or not be able to sleep within that area at all. So how useful are they? They do have their uses. They're kind of niche uses, but I feel like they belong here in the C tier. And because they're higher up on the feeding chain than chickens are, I also feel like it's appropriate to place them higher in the list than a chicken, especially with as versatile as the foxes can be. So right there in the current middle of C tier is where the foxes go. Ghasts, they're annoying. They float around. There's an achievement for getting them to the overworld and then executing them while they're there. They drop ghast tears and gunpowder. Ghast tears can be used to create end crystals, which if you live in a PvP type environment, you're going to want to have access to those because they are incredibly powerful tools for trapping or setting up just a couple of different combat methods. Very, very useful in terms of end crystals, though they are quite annoying. And I'll say that again because they are. They make a lot of noise. Their fireballs are annoying to have to deal with, though playing tennis with them and trying to hit that back to them it's a fun enough game, I suppose you could say, but they're annoying. And they have a couple of very specific niche uses, but I don't feel like they are an overall game-breaking mob. And a lot of the core functions are not things that are actively sought out by passive players. That being said, they are at least more useful than the mobs that we currently have in D tier. So I'll go ahead and place these guys in C tier as well, though I don't think that they're nearly as beneficial as the other mobs that we have listed up here at this point in time. We've talked a little bit about the Elder Guardians. Guardians, they will offer the same kind of drops in terms of the Prismarine shards and the crystals, which Prismarine is an awesome building block in terms of its standard variant, the Prismarine block variant, the Dark Prismarine, which is an incredibly beautiful block, as well as the Sea Lanterns, which in my opinion are some of the best lighting sources in the game. They do have that drawback of not being able to provide sponges upon being killed, but sponges are a very unique resource, so I can't really complain a whole lot about that. And they're kind of a quirky, fun little mob here. So I do feel like they also belong here in the C tier of things. And I know I just put the Ghast right here, but I'm going to bump that Ghast down another slot in this list. And I'm actually going to put the Guardian ahead of the chicken as well. And now I've got to go run and grab that chicken head so I can place it right here. Okay, Hoglands. Hoglands are some of the more infuriating mobs that were added in the 1.16 update. I've lost a couple of hardcore worlds to Hoglands. and I don't think of them very fondly. However, Hoglands are kind of important for worlds where you, for whatever reason, choose to set your spawn point in the Nether. And the reason that that's important is because Hoglands are a really good source of food and leather in the Nether. Now, they're very aggressive. They hit quite hard. They have knockback on their hits, which, why was that a thing that they needed to be given? But there are workarounds for that, specifically warped fungi standing between blocks that are no more than 1 block wide. They can't fit through those type of gaps. So there are workarounds to them, and they do have some benefit. They're not as useful or versatile as the cow is, but they do have their uses, even with annoying as they are. And I would talk about the Zoglin, but that's a completely different mob, so we'll get to that guy a little bit later. But for now, let's go ahead and place him up here in the B tier. And I will place him in he's got to go behind the cat. As much as I'd like to put him ahead of it, he's got to go behind it. Next up, we got horses. Horses, they run. I mean, they're a very versatile, quick land traversal animal. Well, they can be. Some horses are very, very slow. They've got decent amounts of health, so you don't have to worry about them too much. And despite the fact that they can be a little bit difficult to tame if you're not doing it with like apples and other things, they can cause some issues and some trouble for you. Apart from that, in a pinch, they can be used as an extra source of leather, which I wouldn't recommend necessarily, but you can do it. Use at your own discretion, I suppose. They're not the easiest animals to upkeep, to breed, though if you really want to get into that, you certainly can. They have the unique ability of being able to be bred with donkeys to create mules, and we'll talk about mules in just a little bit when we get to them. But they can't be given that same inventory as the mules can, though they can be outfitted with armor to increase their durability and some of their survivability as well. So where do they belong? I mean, as cool as they are and as much as I love that they're in the game, they just don't have a whole lot to offer. So I'm going to place them here in D tier, and I will place them ahead of the cave spider. How's that? Because the cave spider just, again, doesn't really bring a whole lot of uniqueness to the table. Now, here's a mob that's kind of useless, the Husk. So the Husk, yeah, it has a unique drop, in that being the form of carrots, but you can also farm carrots. So there's not really a whole lot of things. You get hit by them, you're affected with the hunger debuff, which will slowly drain your hunger meter, and that's not a fun experience for anyone. There's baby husks, which baby zombies are already terrible abominations that I very much disagree with. But they don't offer anything unique in terms of things. So this is a mob that's going to go straight into F tier. But congratulations, bats! You're no longer alone, but you're still the worst mob in the game because you don't do anything. At least the Husk will give you something. And now the Husk can be made a little bit better if you have the Rotten Flesh to Leather data pack on your server, because it at least allows you to do or choose to do something with that Rotten Flesh, but they're not great. And I don't feel bad about putting them where I have them. Iron Golems, on the other hand, are incredibly useful because not only will they, defend villagers with their lives and throw themselves into harm's way to do so, you can also set up one of the most overpowered farms in the game, that being an iron farm, because nobody likes going out and mining for iron. It sucks. It's not a fun experience. But thanks to the power of villagers panicking due to the sight of a zombie and some clever setup, you can set up iron farms where you get access to infinite amounts of iron, as well as a couple of poppies if you're really in the need for some extra bone meal or some red dye. So we'll go ahead and place iron golems up here in the S tier, because where else would they go? They serve a very clear defensive purpose, and they have a pretty awesome drop when and if you do take them out. There's a reason that speedrunners single them out in their speedruns, because it's a great source of early game iron if you're feeling lucky and or risky. I don't think that they are as powerful as Evokers with their Totem of Undying, and Blaze Rods with their sheer amount of versatility, and the Creepers with everything that they have to offer. So they will end up at the end here, though these guys might actually get shuffled around a little bit within themselves, but we'll come back to that. We got Llamas, and Llamas, they do things. They're, again, they can drop leather upon being killed. You can add carpets to them to add a variety of different outfits, and that's just kind of a fun little trope that you can do them. And they do chain onto each other in caravans, so that's an interesting thing that can be done. They'll kind of follow each other around, which can be useful. They can also be equipped with chests, and the chests depend, the storage that you get out of the chest depends on the overall health of the llamas, with the best, of course, being a 5 strength or 5 storage, 15 storage slot llama, but those are incredibly rare. So don't bank on having that. Unfortunately, it's just not something that they can really do. Llamas, they do spit. They don't like wolves, so they will send them away. Llama spit, it does a little bit of damage. It doesn't do a whole lot, but it is a defense mechanism that they have. The spit has some knockback to it, so that's kind of fun. They're hostile towards any zombie variant, as well as Pillagers, specifically the trader llamas that spawn in, which those are just basically standard llamas with a very unique costume or outfit that they have. So that's something. They are very expensive to breed, as you need to breed them up with hay bales. So that's something that you'll need to keep in mind. Not hay individually, but hay bales. I mean, once you have a decent enough wheat farm, you're not going to have trouble with that. So one thing that does kind of make up for the fact that llamas can't have or don't have a set amount of inventory space on it is you can caravan llamas together. There is an advancement for that, of getting at least 5 llamas to caravan. If you leash llamas, you can get, I guess, up to 18 llamas, as you can get caravans of 9, and if you leash second or third llama, then I guess you can get large amounts of caravans going on, but that just tends to be super tedious, so especially with all the setup that needs to go into that. And then on top of that, you could end up drawing the short end of the stick and have a llama that only has 3 storage spaces in it, or 3 or 4 llamas with that much storage space in your caravan, and that's just not great. But they do have their uses, and I do feel like they can be beneficial, and they have some unique quirks. So I will go ahead and place them up here in B tier, though I don't think that they deserve to be placed as high as the donkey. We'll go ahead and place them after the drowned. So we'll go ahead and move the Hogland and the cat and place the llama right here. Next up, we have the Magma Cube. Magma Cubes actually recently got spawners. They spawn in bastions. I mean, they spawn in a lot of different places in the nether, but they do have spawners, designated spawning spaces in bastions. And Magma Cubes, they're annoying. They hit pretty hard. They'll bounce you back. But they do drop magma cream. And magma cream can be used to craft magma blocks. And it can be used to brew potions of fire immunity, or colloquially known as noob juice. So they are not useless, but they have very limited, very specific uses. Based off of the fact that you can make a semi-useful potion out of the things that they drop, we'll go ahead and place them here in C tier, but they do belong towards the end of C tier, especially with as tedious as they can be to mine for some of the relatively restricted benefits that they have to offer. Mooshrooms. They can get you some pretty nice food in a pinch, and I don't mean steak, but yeah, you can kill them and get steak out of them, or if that's really what you want to choose to use your mushrooms for. If you milk a mushroom, you will get mushroom stew, which is a pretty good food source. However, I don't think that they're as versatile as the cows are. If you really want a cow, you can take some shears to your mushroom and you can get that out of him. Or if you hit a mushroom with a lightning rod or with a channeling trident in the middle of a thunderstorm, you can burn the mushroom and turn it into a brown mushroom, which can then be given different flower variants to get some suspicious stew, which provide a variety of different effects. So, kind of a shadow useful mob, but they're very niche in their overall functionalities, the things that they can do for you. And they're hard to find because they only spawn in the mushroom biomes, and boy, are they difficult to track down. But if you can find them, they have some decent use to them. And yeah, sorry, Magma Cube, I just put you here. But we're going to go ahead and bump you down another spot. We're going to bump the Ghast down a spot as well. And yeah, we'll bump the chicken and place the mushroom right here. So, mules. Mules are kind of a fun little shadow option in the game, and they're a sterile version of the donkey. That's what they are. If you breed a horse with a donkey, you get a mule. The mules do all the same things that a donkey does. It's just you cannot breed up a mule. So you can get the same 15 inventory slots. You could kill it and get leather. But why would you go through the trouble of breeding up a mule just to kill it? I don't know. So that's something you can do. They do the exact same things that donkeys do. And I'm giving that kind of a reprimansive tone, but it really is a cool mechanic that can be done. So we're going to go ahead and bump everything down a spot on this list until we can place in the mule. And these two are interchangeable. Just know that the mule does the exact same thing as the donkey. So a very narrow margin, if not identical spots here. The mule is actually probably a spot or two spot behind because it's a lot more niche and difficult to breed up. Let's talk about the Ocelot. Ocelots, they are interesting. They're basically cats, but cats that can't be tamed. They can build trust to a player, which is something that they can do, but I mean they'll kill items. Creepers, stay away from ocelots. Creepers, stay away from creepers and phantoms, stay away from ocelots. They attack chickens and baby turtles. So those are some things that they do. They don't drop anything special upon being killed, so they're a little bit less useful than the cats would be. And they can be bred similar to how cats would be, but apart from that, they offer a lot less versatility than cats do. So basically, they're just a really bad version of a cat, and we'll go ahead and place them down here in D tier. They're better than a cave spider, but I don't think they're better than a horse, so we'll put them right there. Pandas! Pandas are super cute. They're fun. They're adorable. They have awesome techniques. There's different personalities of pandas that you can do. I really appreciate the fact that they're in the game. I love the versatility that they have, the playful little quirks that they can do. They don't offer a whole lot. You can get slime balls from some of them, and if you have an aggressive panda, then maybe you can set up some sort of impromptu defense system. But as much fun as they are and as cool as they can be, they're down here in an E tier. I'm sorry, they're not great, but they do more than the Endermite does, so we can at least give them the win on that. And I will even put them ahead of the cod. Is that better? We'll put them right there. I just really wish that pandas did something. I mean, they drop bamboo and killed, but you can set up a very easy bamboo farm that doesn't involve slaughtering your pandas. So that's the way we're gonna go. So parrots. Parrots are another fun little mob. They dance to music, they fly around, they'll sit on your shoulder. They can be tamed. They don't like cookies. Do not feed them cookies. If you feed them cookies, they will die, mainly because, you know, they've got the chocolate chips in them or whatever else. But apart from that, they don't really offer a whole lot. They're fun, quirky little pets, and they will imitate hostile mobs that are nearby. So they'll hiss like creepers, they'll rattle like skeletons, they'll moan like zombies, and it can be a little perturbing. So they have some really cool features and functionality. They're just very niche with what they do, and they don't really offer anything super useful. I mean, they can give you feathers when they're killed, but why would you voluntarily kill your parrot? They're here in the D tier because they have a lot more integral mechanics and can kind of serve as a warning system, and they're at least a little more fun that you can actively interact with. So they're right on the cusp of the D and E tiers, in my opinion. Phantoms are annoying, but they do give you phantom membranes, which have a dual purpose. They can be used to craft. They can be used to brew potions of slow falling. They can also be used to repair your elytra. If your elytra is getting low on durability, though that's going to cost you levels, you're better off just adding the mending enchantment to it. But in a pinch, you can do that. It's an option. So yeah, they're here in at the tail end of C tier is where I'm going to put them. Oh, get ready to hear about pig-related things for a minute, because it's time to talk about pigs and then the piglins. Pigs, they can be saddled and ridden by, being led by a carrot on the end of a stick. That's an option. They don't go very fast, so not the best version of traversal. They can be bred with carrots, potatoes, beetroots. So that's another option for them. And raw pork chop is what they'll drop upon being killed, or cooked pork chop if they are killed on fire, or you kill them while they're on fire. So those are things that they can do. Not the greatest food source. They're actually a little bit worse than chickens, because at least chickens give you some other items that can be used a little bit. So they go at the end of C tier here as well, but don't beat out the Phantom. I'm sorry. Piglens. Piglens are brand new. They were added in 1.16 and are the natural inhabitants of the Nether, at least certain parts of it. They love gold. If you're not wearing gold, they will attack you. So make sure that you have a piece of gold armor on standby if you're going to be spending any significant amount of time in the Nether. That's for sure. But the Piglin bartering technique and the bastions that they spawn in as well, they've got a lot of really good loot in there. So there's a lot of really good items that can come from the Piglins. I'm hard pressed because part of me really wants to put them up here in C tier, but then you look at the other mobs that we've got up here. We've got the Blaze, we've got the Creepers, we've got the Evokers, we've got the Iron Golems, and they just don't feel like they quite stack up to that level. But they can fit very comfortably here in A tier, and I will place them right ahead of the Enderman. So let's bump the Enderman down and place the Piglin in here. Mainly because you can get more and sometimes better stuff from a nice gold farm than you can get from an Enderman XP farm. And Piglen Brutes. Now this was a mob that dropped out of nowhere overnight. Kind of. I mean, they were not even hinted or talked about being added in the initial releases of 1.16. But they're terrifying. Oh my gosh. They will absolutely annihilate you. And that's what they do. They will not even wait to aggro onto you. If you come near the bastions, which is the only place they can be found, they will hunt you down. And the worst part is if you hit a Piglen Brute, you will aggro all of the Piglens in the nearby area. So that's just fantastic, isn't it? But apart from that, they don't really do a whole lot. They hit very hard. You can get the golden axes they're wielding, but why would you want to use gold tools anyway? And there's not really a reason that you would need them. So yeah, they're a D tier mob. But they at least serve a little bit more of a purpose, so I do feel like I would need to put them at the front of D tier, so let me make the necessary adjustments. Now we have Pillagers. Pillagers, they form patrols, they randomly walk around in the overworld. Some of them will spawn with the captain's banner. It's a good way to start a raid if that's something that you're looking to do. But they don't really do a whole lot. I mean, you can aggro them and get them to break the crossbows that they're wielding to turn them into passive mobs, but they're not great. I mean, yeah, you could get them to do a couple of different things, but they're not smart. They'll fire on their own comrades because they hate you that much that if you move in front of them, they will fire directly at you and hit whatever's in the way, whether that's one of their own comrades or a different mob, or if they do happen to land a hit on you, that's something that they'll do too. So yeah, they're not great. They don't really serve a purpose other than they're grunts in a fight. So I'm going to stick them right here at the end of D tier. Yeah, they're going to go underneath the Parrot. That's where they're... Why is your... I guess I placed that instead of placing it in the item frame. So there we go. We've got Polar Bears up next. Really appreciate the fact that these guys are here. They don't do a whole lot. If we're being completely honest, you can get raw cod or raw salmon from them. You'll never get cooked varieties of those foods from them. Polar bears can exist in either a passive or hostile state. If you mess with the cubs of a polar bear, the bear will come after you. That's pretty common about what they would do in real life. And they also will take out foxes because they do not like foxes. Even the cubs will go after and take down foxes. But that's about all that they do. They fall into the we're here and we do things. The panda bears are at least a little bit more quirky and endearing. So we'll go ahead and place the Endermite again down here towards the end. And we'll place the polar bear right there because at least you can get bone meal out of cod, I guess. Pufferfish. Pufferfish, they're annoying to deal with, especially if you sneak up on them with it because they're very small. Until they puff up, you can't even hardly notice that they're there. They'll poison you, and we've already talked about how annoying poison can be. But one of the things that they are very useful for, well, I guess you have two main uses. The one more commonly known use is they can be brewed into potions of water breathing, which are certainly helpful. And the other item that they can do is you can eat them and undergo the poison and nausea effects, which is needed for the How Did We Get Here achievement. So that's an item that they can do, I suppose. Apart from that, they don't really have a whole lot of uses. But based off the fact that you can make a potion that's pretty darn useful from these guys, they do find themselves at least into the C tier of mobs. And I'll go ahead and place them just behind the magma. No, yeah, just behind the Magma Cube is where we're going to put them. So let's move the pig over. And let's move the phantom over as well. Rabbits, in their current iteration, they're so useless. They don't do anything. I mean, that's not entirely true. You can get potions of jump boost from brewing up the rabbit's feet. You can get some, I guess, some mediocre food out of the rabbit flesh. And they drop rabbit hide, which can be combined with itself to make leather. Now, they are being given a more specific use in 1.17 because you will be able to use those rabbit hides to make bundles, which will help with some early game inventory management. So they will eventually serve some additional purposes. They will get better than what they're currently used for, but as of right now, they belong somewhere here in D tier. I guess that you can get a niche potion out of them. Puts them at least up above. Yeah, we'll put them up above the Ocelot. So let's bump some of these guys down. Now Ravagers. Ravagers, they hit like a truck. There's a lot of jank that you can pull off with them. I mean, Tango has a very interesting video about how you can literally teleport hundreds of blocks across the map by blocking one of their hits with a shield. So if that doesn't speak to just how quirky these guys are, I don't know what does. You can set up some farms that involve Ravagers to kill different players. They hit very hard, so they're very troublesome. They can only be acquired in raids, so it's not like you're going to run into one of these guys passively. So at least there's that. They do have a couple of uses. And you get saddles from them when they're eventually killed. So if you don't have a good method of getting saddles before then, I mean, you could technically set up a raid farm and get a fair amount of saddles out of these guys. But that's a very niche utility, and they're not a prevalent version or a prevalent method of really anything at this point. So we'll put them, and I know I just moved a bunch of these guys, but we'll put them just ahead of the horses. That feels about right. You know what? I'm actually going to bump them all the way up to the top of D tier. Just kind of while I was sitting here thinking about it, that feels like a much more fitting home for where they are compared to the other mobs that are in here. I just can't justify putting them up into C tier is what it comes down to. Salmon. They're basically the same as cod. They give very similar drops. So I think that they're a little bit better than cod, but by a very, very narrow margin. They're here. They exist. We'll get over it, I suppose. It's been a minute since we've been able to visit the top half of the tier list. And I think that this next one is really going to bring it home for us. Sheep. Now, sheep are really, really good. And that's because you can get wool from them. You can set up automatic wool farms. And wool can be used for a lot of different projects. They can be used to make banners. They can be used to make carpets. They can be used to make beds. There's just a lot that you can do with wool. And if you get bored of using them for wool, you can always harvest them for lamb chops and mutton. Which is a decent food source. They can be dyed a variety of different colors. You can name it Jeb_. You can get a fun little rainbow sheep. There's a lot of really fun things that you can do with sheep in particular. Now, I don't feel like they outclass the Endermen or the Piglens, but they are a solid A tier in terms of the other drops that they have, so we'll place them right there. Next up, we have Shulkers, and I know the Shulker head, it's not super impressive. It's not my favorite head in the pack, but it's what we have. But Shulkers, they, apart from being annoying to deal with the little Shulker bullets that they shoot out that will cause you to levitate up and around places, and that's kind of needed for the how did we get here advancement, and I'm now getting flashbacks of PTSD to that one time that I tried to move him through the end to the overworld, to the nether, and back to the overworld. That was a whole process just for the guy to off himself. But Shulkers, you get access to one of the best storage materials in the game in the form of Shulker shells, which allows you to have Shulker boxes. And they will just barely round out the bottom of our S tier category on that aspect alone. Yeah, they have other uses, and they're a little more versatile with some of the things that they can provide, but massive expansion of portable storage, that's just a no-brainer. Now, I don't think they outclass the Iron Golems in terms of what they drop and what they provide, but you cannot discount the power that comes with being able to have portable storage. I'm sorry, it's just a no-brainer. Silverfish, on the other hand, they don't do anything. They don't. There's a silverfish spawner at the end portals, and they don't do anything. If you mine an infected stone, you're going to get a silverfish. If you hit a silverfish while you're near infected stone, you're going to find more silverfish. They don't do anything. They're just annoying little terrors, and I don't want to talk about them anymore. I don't think that they're as useless as bats, because yeah, you can listen for the sound of silverfish if you're trying to find an end portal spawner, but that's the only little tiny bit of versatility that they have over bats. They're terrible, they're awful, they're down here at the bottom. Skeletons, on the other hand, these guys, there's no doubt about it. These are an S tier mob, and the reasons why are plentiful. You set up a skeleton spawner farm, you're going to get access to a ton of bones, which bones is excellent for bone meal, bone blocks. There's just a lot that you can accomplish with those. Bone meal, of course, is the driving force for a lot of organic powered farms, or a catalyst for those at the very least. There's the world is your oyster with what is available from the skeletons. And I talked about this a little bit in a video a couple weeks back, but in 1.17 you can convert the skeleton spawners into stray farms by the use of powdered snow. If you missed that, I'm sure I'll link the video somewhere, either in a card or in the description or a pinned comment, because I'm very proud of that video and how it came out. I don't think that they edge out the other contestants in this tier, but they are highly, highly useful and easy S tier character there. Skeleton horses, they're unique, but they're not game breaking in the same way that skeletons are. Now, skeleton horses, they are an undead mob, so they wouldn't be triggered by withers if that's something that you are needing to be mindful of in the servers that you're playing on. And the other perk that they have is they can be ridden underwater. And they are actually a decent form of underwater transport, all things considered. I mean, yeah, Riptide Trident's better, and you can probably get one a little easier than you can get a Riptide Trident, just due to how aggravating and infuriating the drowned can be. But they have their uses. They're a little bit versatile here, and this is where we're going to start breaking into a second row in one of our tiers. So I do feel like they belong in C tier, and after looking at it for just a moment or two, I'm going to place them just ahead of the pig. Slimes. Slimes are awesome. They can be a little bit tricky to find. You can find slime chunks and make pretty easy farms there. You can also go find them in swamps. Slime balls can be used to make sticky pistons. They can be used to make leads. They can also be bundled together to make slime blocks. Those are immensely powerful when it comes to using redstone and a bunch of different redstone contraptions. They revolve around the use of slimes for increased functionality and versatility. And I honestly think that they're a little bit better than bees and honey because they're a little bit easier to farm once you know where to look for them. So we're going to place the slimes right here next to the sheep. And you can tell that this is not a slime block, but it is indeed a slime head based off the fact that they do have that quirky little slime face right there off the front. Snow golems. They don't do a whole lot. Yeah, they'll attack some passive mobs. They don't even spawn naturally. They're just a fun little, quirky little mob that can do things. I guess they're a pain to build up, and yeah, you can make some snow farms with them, which I guess does make them a little bit more than useless, but I don't feel like they're a little bit more than useless enough to the point where I could justify putting them up here in E tier. But I will give them the edge over husks. I will make them the most least useful mob, and that's about all I'm willing to give them. We talked about cave spiders a while back, and spiders are basically cave spiders that are not bad. They're easier to find. They're still annoying to deal with, but you don't have to worry about being poisoned when being attacked by them, and that's kind of the whole point. Now, spiders, again, these are definitely going to outclass cave spiders, but there are still better methods of getting spiderized than by using spiders. So we're going to go ahead and place him in D tier. I will put him a couple of ranks above. We'll put him right between the brute and the donkey. That feels like a good place for him. We got squid up next, and squid, I mean, they drop some fish when killed. They also drop ink sacs, which is one of the few sources of black dye in the game, and a very reliable early source of black dye is the other method. You have to track down withers and make withers kill other mobs to get wither skulls, so that just requires a lot of additional setup that, frankly, some people just aren't cut out for as well. If I'm being honest, not everyone can just take out a wither or set up a wither farm for getting wither roses. So you might just have to deal with the fact of looking for squid when it comes to collecting your black dye. Now, black dye is very useful. The ink sacs themselves can be used to make books and quills, which are usable for a lot of different things. And apart from that, that's really the biggest thing that they do. I can't justify putting them up here in the B tier with the rest of these mobs, so we'll place them into our C tier as well. And where do they belong in here? They belong just ahead of the skeleton horse, because at least some of these mobs up here, they're used in different potions or have other fun little quirks that make them unique. So we'll go ahead and move the pig and the skeleton horse. Now, strays. I talked a little bit about strays earlier, and I think strays are really good. The one thing that keeps me from putting strays up with our skeletons is the fact that, well, strays are very hard to come by currently. They will be easier to make once we have our 1.17 mechanics and powdered snow and other things. And the biggest difference between strays and skeletons is strays will drop arrows of slowness when killed by a player. So that is indeed an option that can be done. And in Bedrock, if a stray is killed by a charged creeper, they will be able to drop a wither head. So that's an additional perk or a good thing that you can look forward to on Bedrock, especially once strays are a lot more easy to come by. But currently, just where they're not a super accessible mob, they've got to go down just a little bit. You still get all the same things you get out of Skeleton, so I'm going to place them at the end of A tier. Just know that they will rise up, or they will be placed in a higher class a little bit later once they're easier to come across. Next up, we have the Strider. Striders, again, another new mob that were added. Their big quirk, they walk on lava, and you need to have a saddle to use them. Now, some Striders do spawn with riders, and you can, basically have a saddle that way. But it's such a niche mechanic, and yeah, it's good for early game traversal, especially with your warped fungus on a stick. You can right-click it and make it go faster, but that's all they really do. So I'm going to place them at the end, the very end of D tier, because I honestly feel like they're just kind of bordering down into the E tier as well. But at least they have a function where these ones really don't. So that's what kind of gives them the edge. Next up, there's the tropical fish. And oh my goodness. There is a lot of different combinations of tropical fish. But basically, all these things is they're glorified picture frames. When you kill a tropical fish, you can get some bone meal, you can get a tropical fish, which I guess you can consume, and you can put them in a bucket. That's kind of all they're good for. They come in a variety of different patterns, so if you want to build a fish tank, this is the fish that you would want to put in that fish tank. But apart from that, that's all they're really good for. So they're right here in E tier, right alongside our other fish that we have down here. I'll put them right here behind the cod, because apart from being, sentient picture frame trophies, that's really all they're good for. Turtles, on the other hand, they're a lot better. You can breed them for their turtle eggs. They're unique in the fact that they're the only mob that will lay a respawn egg, which you can then mine with your pickaxe to grab and place those eggs down wherever you please, whether that's changing or moving their native beach, or if that's using those eggs as bait for a farm. Those are all options, all things that you can do with those turtle eggs. You can also raise up the baby turtles, and you can collect their scoot, as that's what they expel when they grow to the fully grown variety. Once they have dropped their scoot, you can either use the scoot to make turtle master potions, which make people move very slow, but also make them more resistant to damage. So that's an option that you can go with. There is also the fact that you can combine 5 pieces of scoot and make a turtle shell helmet. And that turtle shell helmet will allow you to have passively 10 seconds of water breathing, and then you can add respiration and aqua affinity to have over a minute of underwater time. Or you could make potions of water breathing using pufferfish, but those are all things that you can do with turtles. So they at least have some uses. They're a bit niche with those uses, but they exist. And I'm going to place them right here ahead of the Magma Cube. And that's going to be a bunch of heads. So I'm going to do that now. Vexes. Vexes are little ghost phantasmoid type opponents that let out shrill cries and track you down with very sharp weapons. That's about all they do, though. They don't offer any real benefits. They count towards the cap of hostile mobs on a raid, so you've got to watch out for them, I suppose. And they are only summoned in by the Evokers, so thankfully they don't spawn passively. You don't have to worry about them that way, but they hit decently hard. and that's about all the credit that I can give them. Apart from that, they don't give any special drops. They don't do anything. They don't really serve a purpose or a feature. I know I said I was going to have the Pandas as the king of E tier, but I think I've just found a different one. So we're going to put the Vex at the front of this list. Villagers. It's no secret. Villagers are very useful. They're very powerful. They're very versatile. And you can get a lot of good things out of villagers. So I don't think that it's really a secret to anyone, especially librarian villagers, and the sheer amount of books that you can get out of them. That takes basically the whole purpose of the enchanting table out of the equation, because if you have the patience to grind up and trade out your villagers to get the specific traits that you're looking for before you lock them in, you're going to be set. And that's a very easy way to make a quick buck on an SMP type server if you get into the market of selling books from these villagers. So they're up here in S tier. They're infuriating to work with, but well worth it if you put in the time and the effort. So they outclass our skeletons, they outclass our shulkers, but I don't think that they warrant going above the iron golem. So we'll put the villagers right there. We're getting closer to the end of this list. I mean, you can tell that because of where we're at in the alphabet. But for now, we have the Vindicator. The Vindicator, he's another member of the raid party. He is mainly found within the woodland mansions. You can, I believe, see him as a part of a wandering party on Bedrock Edition, or those scavenging parties, but the only other places that you're going to run into him are on raids and in the Woodland Mansion. Now, he does hit quite a bit harder than his counterparts. He does not have ranged attacks because he does not have a crossbow, but with his axe, he will run you down and whack you and deal quite a bit of damage as he does so. And as an added bonus, I guess, if you name a Vindicator Johnny, he will become aggressive towards any and all mobs, and he will take them out. Which that's a choice that the developers made, and yeah, it's a reference to The Shining. I know why it happened. It's just something that has happened. So I feel like he is right here at the end of our C tier. Because, yeah, he does have that one additional feature and functionality that places him just above his little Ravager buddy that's here at the top of D tier. Wandering Trader. I really, really, really want to place this guy right here. But I will concede that the Wandering Trader serves 1.5 purposes. One is he is actually the current most reliable source of Nautilus shells. Because it's not a guarantee that Drowns will spawn with them. In fact, it's a pretty low chance that a Drowned will spawn with a Nautilus shell. It's also a pretty low chance that the Wandering Trader will give you a Wandering... it's also a pretty low chance that the Wandering Trader will give you a Nautilus shell. But he will give you Nautilus shells that you can buy off of him at an elevated price of 5 emeralds per Nautilus shell, and you can buy up to 5 off of him. The other kind of half criteria that I'll give to him is you can buy some exclusive items off of him that you would otherwise need to go track down. You can get like jungle saplings off of him if you're nowhere near a jungle biome and you don't know where that would be located. You can also get a couple of other items. You can buy pufferfish off of him. You can buy coral. That's really about it. And because he actually does something, I'll put him up here in E tier. I'll even put him ahead of the Endermite. But that's as far up this list as I'm willing to put him. And it's kind of paining me that I have to put him up that high on the list at all. Witches, on the other hand, are a lot more useful than the Wandering Trader for sure. But when I was talking about, spiders and cave spiders and the spider eyes, This is what I was talking about. You don't even have to combat spiders to get spider eyes. You can just set up a witch farm. And witch farms don't only give you spider eyes, they will give you glass bottles. So that means that you never have to waste your glass that you either traded for or smelted down into making glass bottles for potion brewing. You can get the glass bottles off of the witches. You can get redstone off the witches. So you never have to go mining for redstone again. You can get sticks. Sticks you can burn, so that's a smeltable item right there. You can get glowstone from witches, and if you set up your witch farms with a certain killing mechanism, you can even get some potions out of it. You can get potions of fire resistance. You can get potions of instant health. There's a lot of really good things that you can get out of witches. And because of the sheer amount of drops that they give, and it's kind of a pain to track down a witch's hut to set up a farm, but if you can do that, you can get a lot of really good stuff, and it basically takes out a lot of the grinding that you would need to do. So I'll put it just below the skeletons and just above the ender dragon there. I do really, really like what you can get out of a witch, despite the fact that the witch is an infuriating mob to fight. Oh my gosh. There have been times where she just hits you. She'll hit you with that slowness potion first, and then you are just doomed to suffer through the onslaught of attacks that she has. But it's worth the trade-off if you can set up the farm. Now, the witch very much belongs here at the end of this list, but the wither, this one's going to go way up the list, and this is actually probably where I'm going to reorder a couple of these ones up here at the top, if I'm being completely frank. So the wither, you can get wither roses off of them if you set up a wither rose farm. But of course, what everyone fights the wither for is you get that super awesome nether star, and you can use that nether star to create a beacon, which you use to get a variety of different effects, not to mention regeneration and haste and speed and all of these super awesome potion effects. This was one of the best updates that was made to the game, and will continue to be a super powerful resource there. So we're going to bump down a lot of these guys. And the Evoker, I do still feel like belongs right here. No, that's a lie. The Evoker belongs here. The Blaze is actually going to go right behind the Evoker. And the Creeper, I still feel is better than the Evoker, but the Wither goes right there. Easy. Wither Skeleton is just as useful as, you need Wither Skeletons in order to get the Wither, and you get a lot of the same things that you get off of skeletons. You don't get the arrows or the bows or other things, but you can get coal off of withers, and that's another decently reliable fuel source. You get bones off of them, and you can even set up wolves, which we'll talk about here in just a brief moment. You can even set up wolves to be the killing blow and still collect the goods off of your wither skeletons. So that's always good right there. Now, I don't feel like witches are as... I feel like witches are more powerful than at least the wither skeletons. But I don't feel like they outclass a lot of these other guys up here. So we'll place the wither skeleton down here. And yeah, I'm happy with that placement. Now, wolves, as much as I hate to say it, wolves are not as useful or versatile as cats. So this is the one area where I will concede that cats are better than dogs in Minecraft specifically. But they are still useful. I mean, we just talked about the fact that you can set up wolves to be your killing blow at skeleton powered farms. That includes stray farms. That includes standard skeleton farms. It includes your wither skeleton farms. So they do have a purpose in tracking down those things. And the added benefit is if they're not sitting and you take damage from something, they will fight very loyally to save you from that. Cats won't do that. Cats give you a couple of other benefits and scare off some of the other hostile mobs, but wolves, they will throw themselves into the fray if you take damage from something. So very, very useful there. And who doesn't love having a little pet dog by their side, especially one that'll go literally everywhere with you, and you can change the color of the collar of them. It's just great. Hoglands. We talked a little bit about Hoglands and the fact that I don't really like them. They're useful. Zoglins don't give you leather. They don't give you the pork chops, but they are brutal. They will attack anything that moves. They're just like the Johnny Vindicator, except you don't have to name them anything special. They will go after anything. If it lives, if it breathes, the Zoglin is after it, and it absolutely hates it. The only thing it won't attack is other Zoglins. They are brutal. And they're powerful. They hit hard. They have a high health pool. There's just a lot to be scared about with the Zoglins in particular. They're going to go right here between the Piglen Brute and the Spider. That's where they're going to go. We're down to our last three. And to start it off, we have a very underwhelming zombie. Zombies, they're marginally more useful than husks. Marginally. And that's because you can get, I guess you can get carrots and potatoes and other things off them. They can drop iron ingots, which is useful, but apart from that, you're just getting rotten flesh. Nobody likes rotten flesh. Nobody knows what to do with it. Nobody likes it. So yeah, I'm going to place zombies just immediately above husks. That's what we're going to do. That's where we're going to place them. Now, zombie villagers are kind of in a weird spot because, yeah, zombie villagers, they'll spawn naturally, but you can also convert your villagers into zombie villagers. I guess as zombies, villagers are useless. But it's the potential of what they can become that really kind of makes them shine above. I mean, yeah, you can turn them back into a regular villager, but you get discounts on their trades once you've done so. And the zombie villager right there. Because at least this guy has more potential than these guys do, even if there's not a whole lot of great that's going to come from this guy. And the zombified Piglen. Now, this is the one weird zombie in the group. Because, yeah, you still get rotten flesh off of him, but you get gold off of this guy. And previously, gold didn't really matter a whole lot. But if you set up a zombie piglin farm, you can then get access to a lot of gold, which you can then hand right over to piglins to get copious amounts of items. Yeah, the issue is you're going to have to craft up a lot of the gold because the primary thing, or the elevated chance that zombified piglins have to drop, is the gold nuggets, and you need the ingots for the best trades with your piglins. But you can do it, and they do have a decent amount of power to them. So previously, yeah, they were like E tier, not a whole lot of really good things that you could do with them. But in light of the recent change that they've had and their increased viability, they're going to go here at the end of B tier. So I'm actually happy with the order that I have here. I made the adjustments kind of where I needed or as I had to go. So let's run through a recap of these mobs and where they land on my ranking of everything here. So from least useful to most useful, we have in the F tier, bats, silverfish, husks, zombies, and snow golems. Moving up into E tier, which is has very specific uses, we have Endermite, Wandering Trader, Zombified Villager, Polar Bear, Tropical Fish, Cod, Salmon, Panda, Vex. In D tier, we have the Strider, the Pillager, the Parrot, the Spider, the Ocelot, the Rabbit, the Horse, the Dolphin, the Spider, the Zoglin, the Piglen Brute, the Ravager. In C tier, which is kind of our middle of the road, has its uses. We have the Vindicator, the Pig, the Skeleton Horse, Squid, Phantom, Pufferfish, Magma Cube, Turtle, Ghast, Chicken, Mooshroom, Guardian, Fox, and Elder Guardian. Moving up into the B tier, we have the mobs that are quite useful, if not a little bit of a niche use, with the zombified piglins, hoglands, wolves, cats, llamas, drowned, mules, and donkeys. These are kind of interchangeable because they basically do the same thing. And bees. In A tier, with some of the better mobs in the game, we have strays, slimes, sheep, endermen, piglins, cows, and dragons. And finally, our top 10 best mobs in the game in terms of how they interact and what they have to offer, what they bring to the table, whether that be from farms, drops, anything else. We have wither skeletons, witches, skeletons, shulkers, villagers, iron golems, blazes, evokers, creepers, and finally the wither, which, you know, that's just kind of has to be the best mob in the game. Now, there are other mobs that will come into effect, and a couple of these that'll get pushed around in their functionality. Once 1.17 is fully rolled out, so we may revisit that at that point in time if there's enough interest in that, or if people are wondering where the new mobs and new mob features fit into the meta at that point in time. But until then, I think I've done my job. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you liked my breakdown of these mobs and their functionalities, be sure to leave a like on the video. And until then, I appreciate you for your time. If you made it this far, make sure you're subscribed because you listened to my whole opinion. And that would mean a whole lot to me, as we're coming up on that 750 subscriber milestone, which means that I get a Twitter. And I don't know if I'm excited or terrified. But anyway, thanks again for watching, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye-bye.